Over the years, I've employed hundreds of team members, and these are pretty good folks, people who really cared about the job and really worked hard to help our business grow. At times I've seen some of them come into my office and they would ask me for a pay raise. And one thing that I noticed when people would come in is I noticed that there's an okay way to ask for a pay raise, and then I also saw there was a good way. But one thing I really paid attention to is there's a best way to ask for a pay raise. So if you're somebody who's sitting there watching this video and you've been thinking to yourself, I want to go in and talk to my boss and I want to ask him or her for a raise. If you're not sure quite how to do that, this is a good video for you to watch because I'm going to share some tips on how to ask for a pay raise and specifically the best way to ask for a raise. I'm going to share those tips with you, and that, my friends, that's up next right here on Over 50 TV. Welcome back to Over 50 TV, and before the break, I promised I would tell you what is the best way to ask for a pay raise. And what I want to do now is I just want to really talk about some of the tips, some of the things that I learned and saw when it comes to asking for a raise. And let's really start at the beginning. One thing that I really recommend you do is plan at least 2 or 3 months ahead of when you want to make your request. You never, ever want to ask for a raise at the spur of the moment or after some unexpected expense upends your life. If you do that, if you ask for it on a spur of the moment kind of a thing, you're really kind of at the mercy of the person who's going to decide whether or not you get the raise. And you know what? It puts you in not too strong of a position because you're not prepared. You're not prepared to answer some questions when you're asking for the raise. And it's also likely that you will probably not get what you think you should have gotten if you just took the time to present your request in a cohesive and logical manner. Planning 2 or 3 months ahead, it gives you time to research. It gives you time to build a thoughtful presentation. And it also gives you time to prepare for any questions that you may receive from the person who you're going to be talking to. If you do otherwise, if you rush this presentation through, as I mentioned, it does put you in a weak position, and you probably won't get what you would have gotten if you really took the time to prepare. Now, another thing that I have observed when it comes to asking for a pay raise is always make your request in person. Don't do it by phone or email, and never ever make your request impersonal by doing it via text. Some people I've seen, they want to do it nowadays, want to do it by video chat, and I think that's okay, but I don't recommend it. When you do it in person, it becomes you and your manager sitting across from each other, talking, looking each other in the eye, and really talking about your request. And you can really get a good read on your manager, and your manager will get a good read on you. So doing it in a personal way is always the best way. Now, another tip, and I consider this tip very, very important, you may have thought about it yourself, but do your research. What you want to do is you want to find out what other people in similar positions at your company and really in your industry, you want to find out what they're earning. You want to determine your employer's financial position. To me, that's a good idea, because what you're going to want to find out is, are they in a position to grant your request, or are they going through some belt tightening? What you also want to do is find out what happened when your coworkers asked for an increase. I believe that's real important. It's also a good time to look at other job opportunities when you're searching, when you're doing your research, because as I know this, there is nothing wrong with looking at your options. Now, if you are somebody who is a bit older, if you're over 50, don't think about your age, because what you do is you think about your age, you think about your perception of your age, you think about what other people may think or what their perception is of your age. You don't want to do that when you're entering into a negotiation. Only think about your value and your experience and how those two undeniable benefits, those assets benefit the organization. If you dwell on your age, what happens is you may start thinking, you know what, somebody younger and cheaper is probably going to get hired. You're going to basically give your power, the power that you have, the experience you have, and the benefit that you've had in how you've helped the company. You're giving all that power, all that experience, you're giving it to the manager. No, don't worry about your age. That is something you absolutely don't want to think about. Another important tip that I want to give you or share with you is decide what you're going to do if your wage or salary increase is denied. It's going to help you to be more thoughtful in your approach, and it really doesn't leave you wondering what's next because you've already got a backup plan. You've already made your decision what you're going to do should it happen that your request is denied. And what I find when you do that, when you know you have a backup plan, you go in there and you feel better, you feel more confident, you feel more positive about asking for that pay increase. Now, I want to give you one more tip before I talk about preparing your presentation, the presentation that you're going to be giving to your manager. And that tip is this: decide beforehand. Decide the range of a increase that you want to get. Decide how much you want, whether it's hourly or salary. But decide what you're looking for. Know what you want, but also, and this is key, you're absolutely going to have to be able to justify that amount, because your manager, a smart manager, somebody who's been around, somebody who has some experience, they're going to ask you, well, how did you justify this number? How did you come up with this particular dollar amount? And if you've already given it a lot of thought, if you've already decided this is what I'm going to ask for and this is why I'm presenting this range or this specific number, well, it helps you to respond. You're not going to be nervous. You're going to be able to say, well, this is how I determined that I would like this amount, or I deserve this amount. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later, but that is a key thing. Decide what you want before you go into your meeting, and decide what you want before you sit down. It's so important. So now you've done all your research. You've taken the steps that I've outlined, and maybe you've taken a few more. Now it's time to create that presentation, and your presentation should be in 4, maybe 5 parts. And of course, you're going to have the introduction. I'd start something out or the meeting out by saying, I'm here because I would like to discuss my position and my current salary. Get it out on the table. Now, you could say then, as you may know, I enjoy working here at XYZ Company, and I'm excited to be part of our company's growth. Simple. Get it out there. This is why I'm here. This is who I am and what I'm doing. You can also say, I've worked here since whatever, and my position is, and then you give your position. But then here's what you do, and this is so important. You want to list your accomplishments. And I usually do this in my head anyway. I think about my accomplishments or my presentation. I think of it in terms of bullet points because it just helps me to think it through. But if you made a particularly, I would say, stunning contribution to the company, if you consistently exceeded your sales goals, for example, or maybe you've reduced costs in your particular work area by a high percentage, make sure that you mention those. And when I'm talking to somebody, I slow my voice down when I really want to emphasize something. I always watch and pay attention. Am I being nervous? Am I being a little bit too fast in my words? Am I talking too fast? Am I talking too much? That's why it's so important to me to do your research. And as you're doing your research, you're also practicing. You're practicing what you're going to say. But these are important things. So when you're talking, you're doing your introduction. Then, of course, what you're going to do is you are absolutely going to give the meat of the presentation. You're going to tell him or her what you've done and why you believe you deserve that pay increase. Now, we've entered, I think it's part 3 or part 4 of the presentation. Here's the part. It's just silence. You don't say a thing. You've given the outline. You've told them what your strengths are. Now it's really what we call the Q&A period. And sometimes a manager will just sit there and not say a word. But whatever you do, don't feel that you've got to speak up. You've given your presentation. Now it's their turn to speak. Wait for that person to speak. And myself, I know that I've done this, and I know many other people do it, especially when I'm in a sales presentation. And you give your presentation, and then there's silence. Don't think you've got to fill that void. Wait. The person who speaks next, okay, when they speak, they're going to be asking you questions. And that person who speaks should be the manager who you just presented to. So what do you do if after you give your presentation, you're in the Q&A, and the manager just says, nope, can't do it, can't give you the raise, unable to do it this time? you know what? You look at that manager and you say, well, could you kind of explain to me why you're unable to grant me a pay increase? And you don't let them hem, don't let them haul, don't let them go off on some tangent. You want to know the exact answer. I find that people with more experience will give you and be more direct in their response. Somebody with less experience may just try to change the subject or try to, like I said, try to just go off in some other direction or maybe some tangent. You need that answer, and you want that answer. You deserve the answer. You've worked hard. Get that answer. Now, some managers may also say, you know what? I just can't give you an answer right now. I appreciate you coming in, but I need to think about it. Or they might say, I need to talk to HR. I need to talk to the owner, or they may need to talk to somebody else. And that is absolutely, positively okay if that's what they need to do. But it is absolutely, positively okay for you to say, well, all right, I understand. May I follow up, or can I follow up in say, a week? Or maybe what you just say is, well, okay, well, when would you like me to follow up? But you need to get a specific date, and I say a specific time, and I don't think that's asking for too much. It's absolutely positively okay for you to ask. It is. So ask. Find out when they can meet with you again and when they can give you that answer. I would not go out of that meeting or leave that meeting without getting a firm date. If what they say to you is, you know what, I'm sorry, Sally, Joe, Lou, I'm sorry, I can't give you a response right now. What I'd say is this. I'd say, you know what, I do understand, but you know what, I would like to put this behind me, and I'm so excited for what's going on in our company, and I just want to keep moving forward, and I really just want to put this out of my mind. Now, something that I'm going to say to you, and I think it's very, very important to know. The company, the people you're working for, they're not the enemy. They're not the enemy. Basically, you're on a team, and you're playing for a team. But I will say this, you are playing on a team. And that company, that boss, that manager, they need to pay their players. They need to pay their players, and they need to be fair in what they pay their players. Because after all, you are on a team. But understand and remember something. There are other teams out there. You do have options. You have options. But get yourself an answer. Don't let it go to a point where you're just sitting in limbo or living what I call living in limbo land. It's so destructive. It really doesn't for an employee, and I don't think so much the company or the manager, because sometimes they just put it out of their head. But it's destructive because what happens is you lose your motivation. So get that answer and make sure that when you walk out that door that you know when you will be back, and you know when you will find out whether or not you get that pay increase. Now, at the end of the Q&A session, or maybe even during the Q&A, when you're sitting there across from the manager, your manager could look at you and could say, well, Lou, can you tell me how much of an increase you're expecting? And you probably more than likely are going to hear that, especially from an experienced manager. And how I would answer that would be this. I would say, I have researched the industry, and I know that workers in my position, the average worker is making in this range. And I'll throw you a number. Let's just say the average person's making anywhere from $20 to $30 per hour. And Mr. Manager, I know that's what the average person is making, but I think you probably will agree I'm not the average worker. You know, I've exceeded my goals consistently. Whenever I'm called in, if I've got a day off, I always come in. I have actually mentored some of my coworkers. Whenever I was asked to do that, I was happy to do that. I've really gone above and beyond, and I don't consider myself to be an average worker, and I really hope that you feel the same way. So the manager, more than likely, is going to look at you, and they may not know what to say. They may say, well, okay, Lou, yeah, I think you are a great worker. Matter of fact, I know you're a great worker. So what kind of a range? I'd still go back to, well, the average person's making $20 to $30 per hour, and I believe I'm worth more than that top end. And I kind of leave it at that, because this may be the beginning of a negotiation. And if that's the case, even if you come back and you have to negotiate, I would leave it at that unless they totally press you. If they totally press you, then I would say, well, you know what? I'll just give you a number. And if the average person's 20 to 30, the average range and the top end is 30, well, I'd like to see myself making at least $6 more per hour than that, and that's what is at 20%. So I'd give that number. I really hesitate to do that. Now, here's another thing, and I've heard some people have done this. I've never had any employee come to me and ask for a raise and do this strategy, which is an employee could say, well, you know what, Mr. Manager, I'll leave it up to you. I'll leave it up to you because you know what you can afford. And I have had people tell me that an employee has said that to them. And some employers who are not as caring might just take advantage of that. And that's the wrong approach for an employer to do. But some of them might just come back and give you a number that's less than you were expecting. Now, when they give you that number, you've already told them it's up to them. And so how do you come back to that? You could, and I would, but no, you're doing a negotiation. You want to come across professional and like you're on top of your game and you know exactly what you are talking about. So those are two strategies, but I will tell you, you absolutely positively want to give a number or give a range. Okay, so now you are at the end of your meeting and you and your manager have talked whether they've said, yes, we're going to give you a raise, whether they said, we need to think about it, or whether they said no. You stand up and you look at that manager, you look them in the eye, and you look at them and you say, you know what, I really appreciate the time that you've given me today to talk about a pay increase for myself. And I just want you to know that I enjoy working here. I will continue to do my very best for this company. And if there's anything that you think I need to do or you'd like to see me do, Mr. Manager, please let me know. I am always willing to learn. And as you know, I'm always willing to go above and beyond. And then I would leave it at that. Quick little speech, basically, letting them know where you stand. Be positive. Don't be negative. Don't have that negative look on your face that you're just angry because you didn't get what you want, or you're not happy because they couldn't give you an answer. Be as positive as you can and let that come across in your facial expression. I think that's important. Let me say why. I think it's important because that manager, when you leave, they're going to be thinking about that meeting, and maybe, just maybe, they're going to say, gosh, that person's really worth more money and I should really give consideration to this. Or maybe they're going to say, you know, I might have made a mistake. I've got to really talk to my manager or the owner of the company and see what I can do for this employee. You leave on a positive note. It's only beneficial. Any other way is negative, and it's not going to help you in the long run. Well, that's all I've got for you today, folks. I do want to thank you once again for watching this video. And if you're somebody who's out there thinking about asking for a pay raise, remember something. You deserve it. You've earned it. I would not hesitate to follow the steps I've asked, to go ahead and plan what you're going to say, write out a script or an outline, and then schedule that meeting, ask for the date and time, and then you go to it. Well, that's all I got for you today, folks. I just want to thank you for watching this video. I want to say one more thing. Please go ahead and subscribe to Over 50 TV. You can do that by hitting that little red button. It's underneath your screen. There's also a little bell. If you hit that little bell every single time I upload a new video, you will be notified in your inbox. Well, as I always say, have a great day, everybody.